Hey, everybody.
Hey. Hey. Sorry. Hi.
Go ahead.
Okay. Hi. Welcome. So I am Pete. I think that's pretty obvious. I hope.
I could be Pete.
Right? Maybe. And I've been at eBay for 10 years, but I've been like a seller for like 20 years on and off. That started like 20 years ago. And I started with random things, and then I ended up selling like motorcycles, parts, and getting into mechanics. And then I joined eBay 10 years ago, and I basically stopped. Right? I thought I was going to join eBay, and I thought like I can continue selling and doing all this stuff. That stopped. But recently I've been selling again. I've been doing a lot of decluttering, selling a lot of stuff on and off. And it's great. I'm basically decluttering to make space for my daughter and all the things that she's getting. Her college fund, everything else, right? She's only like this tall. Yeah. And I should say I am the architect for eBay search, so it's basically my fault in some way.
It's the brains behind the operation.
I can't believe I'm allowed to come out and talk, so.
Well, with that intro, I'm just Abby. So I'm Abby McGuckin. I am with Google. I partner with eBay, so I'm eBay's lead business strategist who works on ways that Google and eBay can partner together. And the idea behind this is so that we can focus on the approaches, best practices, and collaboration that allow eBay to grow their business effectively, and then ultimately your business as well. So why are we here today, Pete?
Well, we're going to go through some of the best practices that we see and kind of share where things are going, where we think things are going to turn up and go, like some of the new stuff. We hear all the words like AI, agentic, and all that stuff, and kind of what that means, and then some of the best practices for search. And again, I can't believe I'm allowed to share out some of the stats I'm going to share out. Somehow it got signed off, which is great. And yeah, it's not going to be that surprising, some of these best practices, but to get through that and then get to Q&A, I think.
We'll have a Q&A at the end.
Yeah, it's going to be.
Okay, so to kick us off, the reason that I am here today is to lead into some of the reason that the world is going through a lot of change. A lot of change in a lot of ways, but for today's intents and purposes, we're going to focus on marketing and AI. So, getting into it, past the agenda slide, we want to share with you guys a little bit about how the world of e-commerce is evolving, how both eBay and Google are working really hard to evolve with it, and then also how we are trying to meet consumers' changing needs, which are perpetual. So part of this, we want to cover what you can do to stay ahead of the curve, but ultimately what we want you to take away from this is a better sense of like what good looks like, how you can improve your listings, how you can better show up in search results, which I think at the end of the day, we're all looking for. So when it comes to trends that we see reshaping modern e-commerce, there are really two things that we see sticking out. First, consumer expectations. Today's consumer wants things that are visual. They want them browsable, snackable, searchable content. They want it to feel streamlined, personalized, customized. They want to go on YouTube, they want to go on other social media, they want to go on search, and they want it all to be tailored to them. The other thing that we're seeing is, and we can't escape it, is the technological advancements. We can't really have a lot of meetings these days without using AI or artificial intelligence. But this is one of the things where Google is perpetually evolving our search experience just to meet the changing consumer needs. So one of the recent advances that we've really put to place is how we're integrating AI into our search experience and into the consumer experience overall. So I know Google's famous for some pretty cool things. Moonshots that we call things like self-driving cars for Waymo. We also have drone delivery with Wing. But I want to just reiterate, like search has always been and still is our biggest moonshot. This is where the bulk of our company spends a lot of time. This is where consumers are spending their time. This is where they're finding connectivity. So we make thousands of improvements to search every year. Some of my favorites over the past decade, Google Lens. I love the knowledge graph. And I don't know if a lot of people are aware of this, but you can actually hum a song that's in your head into Google, and it will tell you what the song is. I do this more often than I would like to admit. But we are evolving, and we're trying to find ways that people find information. So it's important to remember that the way people find information, it was never really meant to be inside a little search box. That's how we started, but people are embracing all of the new ways that they interact and search for the information and the resourcing and the products that they want and need. So things like text, voice, circle, scribble, and yes, my humming. So as a result, consumer queries have actually never been more complex. We are seeing the longest, most complex queries coming through on our side. In fact, I believe we're seeing 12 billion visual searches a month right now using Google Lens. That's fourfold what it was just 2 years ago. So this is a growing number of queries, and this is also becoming more multimodal. Like they're asking a lot of different things, and they're asking it in succession. So this new search behavior is actually a very big departure from where we historically have seen consumers use Google and other search engines. They would search short phrases. You'd click on the link, you'd do a bit of research, go back, search again, find other things. You would have to basically be your own researcher. You'd have to do it all. You'd have to connect all of the dots. And for some, this could be a little complicated. So in this particular example, consumers had usually just searched for hybrid bike. But that's not always what they're exactly looking for, is it? No, it's not. When you see here, they actually wind up having to refine searches over and over. And when they finally land on the question that they ultimately needed to ask, it was e-bikes in red for a 5-mile commute with hills. A little bit different than just a hybrid bike. So with all of this complexity, consumers expect and want us to have better answers. They want them faster, and they want them accurate. So you have maybe seen our search page recently, where in the last year we've released something that we call Search Generative Experience, where you can interact a little bit with AI, have AI results. They try to really understand what the intent is behind the consumer's query. And this ultimately enables you as consumers in general, to ask complex questions to the search engine, and you get answers back like you're speaking to a subject matter expert. So, all of this to say, how does all of this personalization and customization happen? How does it come to life? It happens with data. So good, clear data is going to be the most important thing you can think about when you're trying to stay ahead of the curve, stay ahead of AI, stay ahead of what the consumers really want. And so the better the data, the better the answer, the happier the consumer, and that's the basis for today. So I'm going to hand it over to my friend Pete here. He's going to talk a bit about eBay's evolution in this space. We're going to talk a little bit about our best practices and approach that you can take as sellers to stay ahead. And we're going to dive into ways that you can really leverage the ecosystem that we have been working on for you as sellers to grow your business.
Okay, thank you.
Over to you.
No pressure. So what we have today is you go to eBay and you search for iPhone, and then you click a filter, you do network and memory and features and connectivity. You might requery, you might filter, and it takes time, right? And so that's today, and that's how we've trained people for the last few decades, right? Put a query in and then do all this work. Well, that's what we think this is going to move to. What we're starting to see is it's going to become what we say conversational, right? So it's no longer going to really be like search for something, click, 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 click. It's going to be like just type it, or talk to it, or whatever, and you're going to just have this conversation, right? What's the best iPhone for over $300 and the T-Mobile and whatever you want, and this is where it's going to go to. And so this is what we're thinking of more like conversational search. So when you start hearing things like agentic search, really to start with, it's conversational, like just interacting and talking and having this back and forth conversation instead of having to click a bunch of things, right? And to put it in context, like this is going to be a big change. So 20 years ago, mobile apps, things were nothing. Now it is the majority of our business, right? It's a big thing, and we think this is going to be a similar-sized shift as well. Yeah. So it's also not going to be immediately obvious sometimes that there's a product intent. So this is a Macklin Celebrini rookie card, and to me, this is obvious, right? Super obvious. We know who Macklin Celebrini is as a keyword, that's fine. But it's going to move something more to the right-hand side here, which is going to be like, show me the most undervalued rookie cards and the likely gain if the team wins the cup. To me, that's obvious. That's NHL. We're talking about NHL. We're talking about San Jose Sharks. That's fine. So these models, yeah, I'm actually a Vancouver fan. I'm a Vancouver fan, so like.
Right,
Yeah.
I'll take that.
But this is what's going to happen. So we're going to have these models trying to understand these phrases, the conversation, but also the context about the buyer, like where they're from, what they're into. And so like if somebody else was asking that, it may be the NFL, it may be NBA, it could be anything else. But to me, I know it's the NHL, it's the Stanley Cup. So you're going to start to see these models getting this kind of context as well. So what can we all do about this, right? So we're going to get into best practices. And it's not going to be that shocking, really. As you're saying, it's about data. Data, right? So best practices. So for example, like you have this maximum of 80 characters. Use them, please. But remember that 2/3 of eBay's revenue come from mobile, right? And what this means is basically on the screen size, you don't get to see the entire title, right? And this might be a very boring example to a lot of people, but this is real world for me. Right, I've got to drill some holes in some metal, I'm doing some van work, and I need to cut new threads, and it's very specific of what I need. I need a 5/16 inch tap and drill bit, and on the listing on the side with a good title, that is front-loaded, right? So I see that first, so I'm scanning listings, I'm super lazy, right? So I'm just scanning listings, but I'm not going to go through and click every single thing, no. I just scan it and go, oh, great, got it, move on. And so it's that first 60 characters that you want to optimize to. Now, just as a word of caution as well, like Google, for example, you only show the first 50 to 60 characters and you ignore everything else, right?
I do.
So that first 60 characters is super critical, right? But use the 80. And I say to front load the important keywords, right? Now, I'm going to get into my pet peeve, I guess. Oh, come on. There we go. So avoid extraneous symbols, right? My pet peeve is seeing the word look with @ in it. And I get annoyed because it's such a waste. It is such a waste. And I pulled the data. And again, this is data taken from last month. I went through this specifically and I just looked for all the titles that have a look in them versus the titles that don't for the similar items. And guess what? The click-through rate on these listings that have the stuff in there are 4 times smaller, right? Don't do it. Like things like free shipping, we actually badge up the items to show you free shipping. We work on this in the item card to show this, but there's no need to mention this, right? And so what also happens for search is you're putting these things in, and we do something on the title called token extraction, right? So we're trying to find all the different tokens in here, and we extract them, and we try and figure out, does that match to an aspect, does it match to the data, all these things. We are going to ignore all this other stuff here, right? Because it doesn't match to anything. So we basically ignore it, but you've used half the space up, so your relevance is just going to drop. And then nobody's going to click it. So it's like the worst of all worlds. Yeah. And then I'm always looking at my titles as well. So I was just the other day listing, like vivariums, right? I've got these old lizard tanks, and I list them, and it's not really working out that well. So I go through, and I look at what everybody else is doing, right? Oh, it's not vivarium, it's terrarium, enclosure. Oh. I make the change, I update this, I use all my 80 characters to do it, and I get like 200 more sessions coming through, 200 more visits, and they sell. And by the way, I've got 2 more to sell, and I do offer shipping. They're 4 foot by 2 foot, wood, you don't really get them over here, and I do ship.
I would say for that one, think about how people search.
Yes.
Think about what they will type in when they're like, I'm just trying to find this thing. What would they be?
Right.
Keep it simple.
Right. And so what we also see is like over 40% of people using search use filters in some way. They either requery or they click a filter or something like that. And what I see in the data, again, like last month's data, is that the people that provide us more attributes just tend to do better. And what's happening here, and we'll get into a little bit, is when you do your query, you're doing this filter and refilter and refilter and refilter, and eventually, if you don't use these attributes, you drop off, like you're nowhere to be seen. And so this varies by category, it's very general, but you can see like people with more attributes tend to perform better, right? And by categories like sports trading cards, like you need like 12 aspects in there, really. But you don't need to fill out everything, right? There's no pressure to fill out every single attribute, you just do what makes sense, right? So for example, you have the required thing, so you've got to choose a required thing, but everything else is optional, right? So I'm listing another example. I've got an IKEA lampshade I'm listing, right? It's new in the box. It's available right now. And I've got to fill out all this information. I don't know all the information, right? But sometimes the listing flow is asking me for things like a character. It doesn't have a character, right? So I just don't fill it out. I just fill out what makes sense, add it in there, and then just keep optimizing. So what's going to happen in the future is, hopefully, ideally, we start filling out more of this stuff for you, right? That'll be good. That'll be very helpful. But we're also going to be using this data when we talk to like AI, conversational search. We're going to be doing all this extraction to understand like when somebody writes something in there, we're going to try and map it to the listing as well as using the title. We're going to use all these specifics, right? So it's super critical to have this information. And then if you think of where we're going to go to in like 5 years, 10 years, it may not even be, oh dear, malfunction.
Blame the beard.
There we go, better.
There we go.
Yeah, so where we're going to go in the future is it may not even be a website or an app. You might be asking your own agent to talk to another agent, something like that. And so this data is going to be really, really critical to turn up.
Yeah, I'd say all of this is ringing true, and then everything that you are providing for eBay that's showing up on eBay's site is the same data that we leverage to list on our search engine. So what flows through to eBay will flow through to us, and so the higher quality, the better quality for you.
Right. It's getting those filtered searches as well, getting all that traffic. And again, I fill out all this stuff because I know. I spend the time doing it. So like, yeah, you'll see an example like this, few item specifics there on the left, and then you'll see the better item specifics, and it just fill out more, and as more people filter, these listings on the right are going to turn up more frequently. They're always going to start showing up. So the tip is like, when you're going through and you're making a listing, do a few searches, do a few filters, and see at which point do you disappear, right? Okay, now I think I get into, which is a slide. I get into images. Okay. So the first thing, I know it says 0.3%, and that seems so tiny and nothing, but take a look at our earnings statements from last quarters and apply 0.3% to that. It is a big deal. Right, and we can start seeing that having more images performs better as well. So aim for about 6 to 7 is what I'd say. I'm going to talk about watermarks in a little bit. But really where we're going to go as well is think about things like image search. Like we're going to need more images to understand. We're going to do all this extraction on images as well. So the more that we have, the better it's going to be. Anything else on that? No. Let's get straight into, I think, the end of the slide that I'm pretty sure I was never going to be able to share.
This was a win.
This is actual real click-through data from July. I am surprised I can share this. This is great. So what you're seeing here is actually the percentage of click-throughs for the results based upon each of these items. And this is organic data, so we don't take any sponsored information into that at all. It is literally just people coming to the site and clicking things. And what you can see here is really interesting is the images that are really clean have the better clicks. Now, you would also think that ranking would have an impact as well, and sure it does. But in the bottom, you've got that one with 16% click-through rate. And it's getting more clicks than the stuff above it because the image is nice and clean. Now, if you look at the images beside that on the bottom one on the right, 1% clicks. And look at the image, right? It's got everything going on there, absolutely everything. And you're like, well, it's not that great, right? The other problem that you've got with this as well is that on Google, you're going to disallow the image, disallow the item, right? Because you don't like watermarking either.
We are a bit stricter about that. So if we have watermarks, if we have image overlays, if it's not just a clean, clear image of a product, oftentimes it can be disapproved. It can be disallowed. It takes the marketing team a while to then turn it over, make the image better, make sure that we have what we need. And at such high volume that we get from eBay, it's really, really important that rather than we play whack-a-mole, you guys can help support us in this and make sure we have clean, clear images.
Right. And then we've got to take that image and we've got to do all this extraction work, and it's like, well, if it's just a clean image, we're great. Absolutely great.
Business card with the user's ID or name on it?
I'm sorry?
You take a business card and put your user information on it, your name or your business website.
Within the photo?
Yes.
That can be disapproved depending on what it, like the size and how much it takes up. They want a clean, clear image of the product.
You are only talking about listing photo number 1, correct?
We'll talk about all of them. But we only, as a search today, we only show one.
For Google, generally, we do pull the primary image unless there's something wrong with the primary image, in which case it goes to secondary and it gets disapproved. could be an issue, but I do know that you have supporting images.
Well, is there any other way to prevent image theft? Because that's really the main reason to use a watermark.
That's a great question. Off the top of my head, we have been looking at it as well. I don't know the answer off the top of my head, but I'd have to get you details and give you the follow-up. That's all right. That's a great question.
Okay.
Where are we now? Okay. This is a contentious one. So about ending and relisting items, right? We all think that ending and relisting is the way to get more visibility. But over time, it actually does end up hurting your long-time performance, right? So for example, like just in the context of eBay, so every time you make a listing, we have to store that listing, right? And everything that goes with that listing. Then you end it and relist it, so we have to make a new copy of that listing and keep the old one, right? Now you make another listing and do the same thing. I have to keep the old listing, that older listing, and a new one, right? And you do it again and again and again. You do it once a week. That's 52 times for an item. You've got 1,000 items. That's 52,000 times, right? And there's sellers that will do this for like hundreds of thousands of items, and we have to store all of this, and we have to go back and backdate across all of it. So it is a big problem for us right now. But that said, that's not the reason why we don't want to look at doing this. No. There's other things that happen. So it starts, a great thing is like, how do I explain it? When the item is transient, right? So we put this item into our feed for Google, and Google's going to come and crawl and understand that and try and index it. So it gets the item, and then it's going to come back in like, I don't know, 3, 5, whatever days, and it's going to come back and fetch the item. You ended the item, it's gone. That's it. So you're not going to get that traffic, right? And from my experience, it takes Google about 3 days to get about 90% of our inventory. So you're outside of that window. Just as an aside, for my items, I do auction. I get like 2% extra, if I'm lucky, 2% external traffic, because by the time Google comes back to fetch my listing, it's ended, it's gone, right? But I do it anyway because I enjoy it. Like I enjoy auctions, even though I know for a fact I get more traffic. Like I still do it. Another thing you've got to factor in as well with doing this is like we have saved searches, right? So you'll save your search and you're going to come back and you're going to look for the things that are new. Well, if you're always ending and relisting a thing, you're always going to be new. But that person who's looking at your saved search is going to go, oh, no, that's not new. I'm not going to click on it, right? If I do a search by like newly listed, I'm going to see the same new listings. I know they're not new, so I'm not going to click on them. Guess what we do with the click data, right? We're showing it, nobody's clicking it, so you start going down. Because we're looking at engagement. We're trying to optimize for people buying things, right? But it is a big problem, and we're working on it. I understand exactly why you want to do this kind of thing as well, right? So we are aware of it. We are working on that.
So by ending and relisting the same item, we're basically training the buyers to not click on them.
Yeah. Okay. Some other things here. So, like, I'm pretty sure you won't have this issue, but one thing we see is that images aren't uploaded to eBay. And so what happens is we're fetching like 60 items, let's say, and we cannot afford the time, the latency to go and check every single item, every single image, if it's not there, and fetch it. So we basically crap out, and we have like this placeholder image, right? And then we're sending that, and then we're going to send that over to Google, and you're going to disallow, right?
We will.
Just check your images are uploaded to eBay. So sometimes you might have like a third-party provider for you or something like that. Just check they are uploaded to eBay because you do not want this situation. It doesn't happen that often, but we do see it. That's the thing I would just say on that. And then best practices. So one thing, like a lot of stuff is personalized, heavily personalized. So when I'm testing things, I'll look in an incognito browser, and I'll just see what's happening there. But even then, what I see in my incognito browser, you would see something different. So we do a lot of work behind the scenes as well, like where you're based, the browser, like all these things, device type. So even then you'll start to see it. So I wouldn't worry too much about how you see the rankings necessarily. Just see if you're turning up in filtered searches, that kind of thing. One thing I find is keeping handling times down as well. Tends to work out pretty well. And then my other favorite is discounts. And we really do see things like this. And we're going to talk a little bit about discounts in a minute. But keep the coupons and incentives like easy, right? Just percentage or dollar amount off, right? And make them meaningful, right? We really do have things like 5% off 3 sofas. No. Yeah. And you do it because it's going to give you this little red text on the item card and coupon, and nobody's going to click it, and guess what we're going to do?
It's hard for Google to digest that information,
Yeah, it happens.
believe it or not.
Okay, I've got 5 minutes, so I need to just go through and FAQs. Yes, we do use item descriptions for search. Yes, we do. Just because you don't necessarily see it doesn't mean we're not using it. Seller performance, feedback, shipping, handling time, return rates, it all matters to us, and we do take that in. Listings take about up to 24 hours, but typically it's 5 minutes, unless you're doing bulk upload, right? You need to look at that one. And yeah, I just use product research hub, stuff like that. So I'm just going to try and get ahead. So just coming back to coupons, this is why you want to look at coupon data, because we're going to have these additional integrations coming through where you can see, like, we're going to have these call outs coming out with, like, money off with a code, and that's going to help drive your volumes. So now I am going to hand over and bring up Alan. And yeah, here we go.
Bring on Alan here.
Yeah, bring on Alan. There we go.
We'll come back.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks, Pete and Abby. So my name's Alan Feeder. I'm on the advertising team here at eBay. And this is my first eBay Open, so super cool to be here and see it all come together, be here with you guys, understand your business, how we can help you. You might be wondering, why is advertising up here when we're talking about Google and search? But I think it'll make sense in a minute, but this topic is heavily reliant on a lot of the best practices that Pete and Abby just walked through in terms of how search works on eBay as well as on Google. And so we just want to get into that. Yeah, okay. Cool. So we've talked a lot about the partnership between eBay and Google, how we're working to optimize the way that we market the listings, and the future of search, AI, and all of these fun things to talk about that everybody won't stop talking about. We've also talked a lot about best practices, no watermarks, include free shipping if you can, or make your offers meaningful. All these things will help your items stand out, both on eBay as well as on Google. But you might be saying, like, okay, cool, I do all that. My images are good. My titles are locked in. My price is competitive. I offer returns, free shipping, whatever. So I want more. I want more traffic. It's great that eBay's marketing my listings, but it's just not enough. Maybe I have margin and I want to spend that on advertising efforts. The marketing campaigns perform very, very well, but there's no real lever for sellers to control. Nothing to pull to say, like, hey, I want to have my things served right now. So this is where the advertising product of Promoted Offsite comes in. It essentially sits on top of all the technology and infrastructure that we have with Google. Abby mentioned the product feed, all these APIs, everything that we've been doing over the last 20 years? I don't know, but it's been a long time. Which means we also have a lot of data and a lot of knowledge about how this all works. Whoa. So with that, and based on feedback from you guys, we built this product. And it leverages everything that is good about the partnership that we have with Google, as well as what happens with the eBay marketing team. Any tests or optimizations or anything with AI that goes on in that world, it automatically gets cascaded down to Promoted Offsite because it all uses the same technology. This basically helps you stand out even more in literally a sea of billions of items. I think eBay right now has just under 2.5 billion active listings. And they're all fighting for competition and for spots. So you want to do whatever it is that you can do to make your items stand out as best as possible and perform as best as possible. Whoops. I think I screwed that up. Yeah, so let's just get into the product a little bit. I want to talk about a few different aspects of Promoted Offsite. I'm going to keep it pretty high level, but I'll be floating around the ads lounge later on if you want to talk to me later. But I want to talk about control. I want to talk about the reach. And I want to talk about how easy it is to use, because that was a direct piece of feedback as well. So from a control perspective, like I mentioned, marketing campaigns where we're running listings for you guys on Google, there is no control. We do it, and we do it very well, and they perform very well, but like I said, there's billions of items. It's massive. So we built a product that gives you a little bit more of that control. You put a daily budget of what you're comfortable with spending. It runs at a higher priority than our marketing campaign, so you're automatically boosted above everybody else. And then on the back end, we use a target ROAS bidding strategy. So that basically balances the fine line between as much qualified traffic as we can get while still maintaining a certain level of performance, which I know is top of mind for everybody. As far as reach goes, we know a lot of people are not starting their shopping journey on eBay. They're starting it on Google. We want to get your listings in front of those people as best as we can, and this is a really great way to do that. Not only that, these buyers or shoppers, either way, they're high intent buyers. They literally have their credit card in their hand. They know what they want. We want to get your items in front of them at the moment that they're ready to make that purchase so that you can capture that intent. And then finally, the setup of this is insanely simple. And that was specific feedback we heard from some of our other ad products that we have in our portfolio that might be a little bit more complicated to use. This is give 3 inputs. Give us a daily budget, a start date, and name your campaign, and click launch. And that's it. You can literally launch a promoted offsite campaign in less than 5 minutes. That's by design so that you guys don't have to worry about operationally managing your campaign on Google. You can focus on your business, which is probably what you guys are all here for. And so it's very, very simple. By default, it's account level opt-in, so all of your eligible items are automatically opted into the campaign. We do have some functionality where you can kind of segment and exclude certain items or segment by brand and things like that. But it's very, very simple to use and literally only takes a few minutes. And then the last thing I want to mention before we get into some Q&A is just a couple of stats and metrics on how promoted offsite has been performing recently. Sellers experience an average of a 70% lift in clicks from external channels opting into promoted offsite. A 70% lift in clicks, that's a lot. Also, they experience a 60% lift in sales on external channels, which should be probably the most compelling stat I would imagine that you hear all day, at least I hope, which really says like this product performs, it does what it's intended to do, and if you want to boost your business and drive sales velocity, this is it. It sits on top of all the Google infrastructure that we have. It's very simple to use. We have all this data. So that's kind of how I wanted to close this out.